From Unity Church of Christianity in Houston, Texas, this is The Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational Christian church providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress with the Reverend Howard Caesar.
Usually when a person cries out for help, people respond. They come running, somebody will show up when somebody screams for help. Truth is, there are a lot of people screaming for help inside. You never hear them, maybe, but you can see it maybe on their face. They're hurt, they're wounded, they're going through something, and they're screaming inside for help. Help is an interesting word, help. You know, help comes in many forms. It may come or be administered by a person or a group or an organization or a church or a family or a friend or a doctor or a healer, a stranger. Help comes in many forms. And it can come in the form of some kind of physical help outside yourself, or it can come actually deep within you. You can receive help from the deep within. It can come from the seen or the unseen dimension, which we would refer to as God. But we all need help. We all need help. You know, none of us would actually be here today if we hadn't gotten some help along the way. We've gotten a lot of help along the way. If we really stopped to think about it and contemplate, oh my gosh, the amount of help that I have received, and from so many different places and people. It is just mind-boggling, really. We all need help. And people cry out for help. People have things happen in their lives where they're going through a crisis or a difficulty. Sometimes it's brought on by weather, an earthquake, fires, hurricane, flooding, whatever. We've seen that where then people respond. Their heart opens and they help. People are helped. And many times we have been helped. You know, we had to have been helped. Or like I say, we wouldn't be here. And sometimes we have given help in some form or another. And hopefully many times we've extended help. People need help. Individuals need help. The world needs help. The world needs people helping people in order to make a better world. People historically have been a part of a progression and evolution because they come up with ideas and inventions and ways and means of curtailing disease, of helping restore health, of wanting to help. It's built into us. If there was no help anywhere, really, the world would not be. Really, the world would not exist as we know it. And it would not hold together because the fact that there are caring peoples and compassionate people and people with the passion to serve and help is what holds a world together. And more than we realize. So what would the world be like, really, if no one ever extended help? If everybody was totally focused on themselves, you know? I have a book at home, like some of you may. It's a book of synonyms. And I looked up the word help, and there are a lot of words that mean the same thing or similar to it. To help, to name a few, also means to assist, to aid, to relieve, to support, to uphold, to sustain, to encourage, to advise, to support, to befriend, to foster, to cooperate, to nurture, to nourish, to maintain, to favor, to benefit, to stand by, We could go on a long time, couldn't we? There's lots of ways to help. And lots of those words, as I spoke them, you perhaps have thought of times in your life and people that have appeared that had helped sustain, helped assist, helped aid you, helped advise you, helped whatever. They were help to you and allowed for your going forward in some form or fashion in your life. Help can dominate a person's life in one of two ways. A person can always be looking for help, or they can always be looking to help. Hopefully there's a balance really of both. We're talking today about what I feel is one of the most important spiritual teachings that one can come to understand and incorporate in their life. It is the sacredness of service. And it is sacred. And the reason that it's sacred and it's so important is that really service is love. It emerges from love. It is actually love in action. It is birthed from a place of the heart and of love. It is often an indication of a person who has attained somewhat of a fairly high degree or a healthy level of loving themselves, because the teaching is, we can't give away what we are not ourselves. And so if we haven't really learned to love ourselves, it's a bit more difficult to be of service, but it still can be done, of course. We're learning along the way always. We can never not be of service if we choose to be. But really, it's about our lives eventually become less and less looking for love, and then more about looking for ways and more ways to extend love through compassionate service, making a difference. There's a passage in the Gospel of Luke in chapter 22, and you're familiar with it. It's the place where the disciples are disputing who is the greatest among them. And of course, Jesus entered into this conversation to set them straight, and he said, there are kings of Gentiles, and there are those who exercise authority and lordship over others, but not so with you. Rather, let the greatest among you be the youngest, and let the leader or the chief be as one who serves. And then he continued by saying, for which really is greater, one who sits at the table and is served, or one who serves? He says, is it not typically the one who sits at the table? But I am among you as one who serves. And so what he was saying in terms of it may appear outwardly in life that there is the one who seems to be being served, the one who seems to be the chief, the one in authority, the one in power, is the greater for some reason. But no, that's not true. The truth is, the greater one, you must learn, is the one who is serving. That's where greatness lies. He says, in essence, and I am not here to be served. I am among you to be about serving, to be one who serves. And so the whole passage really is Jesus' way of conveying to the disciples and to all who would later, through centuries, read that passage by divine appointment, to come to understand that the importance of serving in a person's life and helping one another. There's a guy named Albert Pike who shared a quote, and I love this quote. Don't really know who the guy is, but I loved what he said. He said, what we have done for ourselves alone dies with us. And what we have done for others and the world remains and is immortal. All of us, I think, would like to do something in this world that remains and that actually becomes immortal. Others have spoken on what greatness is, and we have sat up and noticed. One was the wonderful Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he said, everybody can be great because anybody can serve. He said, you don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. You have to find your heart. You have to find that love is what you are, your purpose for being, and then translate that into living your life and your world. If we look at some of the people that we have great admiration for, people historically and what have you, it's the people who really were in service to humanity, who left a gift, who were immortal in that sense, who were bold and passionate about what they believed and a difference that they saw they could make. We've mentioned some, people like Gandhi and Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King and what have you. And it doesn't mean that these people were perfect. It doesn't mean that they were flawless. It doesn't mean that they didn't have things to work on yet as they moved along through this life in order to make a difference. They simply had a passion to serve. And they believed in something inside them that wanted to and felt they could help. They could help humanity. Gandhi was about nonviolence. He was about equality, as was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Mother Teresa was about bringing forth and demonstrating and modeling compassion and love and a way of being in the heart with service. And they and others like them have, had an awareness that always something could be done. They could spot a need. They could hear a cry, whether it was outward or they could see it on the face inward of people needing help. And each was connected to God. Each was inspired by a connecting to the divine that moved them more so to do what they were called to do. And they really saw themselves as being instruments of God. Use me, God. And they would be guided from within. In fact, Mother Teresa, her favorite prayer, or one of her favorite prayers, was the prayer of St. Francis, which is being about an instrument of God. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. And where there is hatred, let me sow love. And where there is injury, pardon. And where there is doubt, faith. And where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Well, we can all sow love and faith and hope and light where there's darkness and bring joy where there's sadness. We can all help. We can do that. It is said are two parts to living the spiritual life. The first is in the nurturing of our own spirit. We have to come to the place where we find ourselves and know that we're a spiritual being. And the second is then being an active instrument of that spirit that you have connected with, that's now leading and guiding and empowering you forward. First, we must learn to have the human self be in service of the higher self, the spiritual self. We tend to start out having the human self serving the human self. But we tend to live this life of the mind, which is oftentimes the ego mind, which is chasing after trying to satisfy one's own needs first and foremost and almost always. But eventually we bump up against a void and an emptiness and an unfulfillment. And eventually we learn that really the lasting fulfillment comes in serving that spirit, or that higher self, which is then able to keep everything in perspective, and it keeps us more in balance, and it leads to an awareness of selflessness to a healthy degree, and the idea that we really are all one, that as I help you, I help me. There is no separation. There's not a me and a not me. There is us. 1 + 1 = 1. And that is the truth. As Mother Teresa has stated, at the end of life, we will not be judged by how many diplomas we have received, how much money we have made, how many great things we have done. We will be judged by, I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was naked and you clothed me. I was homeless and you took me in. That was the way she said it. But we must realize that every one of us is already serving. Every one of us during the course of our life has been serving, okay? The defining question is who? For some it may be mainly ourselves, or we may be serving others. We've been an instrument of God. I think there's a balance in there because we ought to have self-care as well and not get lost. But the distinction is not one of being a bad person versus a good person. You need to get that. It's not about guilty, I'm not doing enough. You can't come from that. It's more about finding out where we are in our progression and in our spiritual evolution, really. And the distinction is learning and realizing where much of the quality and the fulfillment and the satisfaction in life comes from and where it is found. Ralph Waldo Emerson, he said, "It is one of the most beautiful compensations of life that no man can sincerely try to help another without helping himself." It's been said that we are here in this life for one single purpose. The way this person said it is that we are here to be healed and revealed. At first, we have to get a hold or a grip around being healed, of our misunderstandings, of our sense of separation from ourselves, from our God, from everything that puts us in separation and fear. And then from that, the truth of our oneness is revealed and is displayed in action. About a century ago, a recognized student of mysticism, whose name was Evelyn Underhill, she wrote about how the student of mystical life was to travel up and down the ladder of contemplation. And what she meant by that is that one should not get stuck on the mountaintop in contemplation, but has to come down into the valley and shine their light that was gained in the mountaintop. Whatever it is you have realized in your path of spiritual growth and awakening has to be brought and translated into life itself, making a difference to those people around, to bring light into the darkness of valleys for people. And so there was a 17th century monk who first went by the name Nicholas Herman and later went by the name of Brother Lawrence. He's well known and written about, and actually he began as a soldier fighting in the army of the Holy Roman Emperor, and eventually he had this shift in which he became a servant of humanity for the rest of his life. And first he was served others as a manservant, and then he entered the monastery and he served in its kitchen for many years. And accounts of him reported that he was annoyed at this duty he was given in the kitchen, that was where they stuck him. But later, he, it is stated, lifted himself into the presence while among the stoves and pans. And he was able to lift himself as much into the presence through what he was called to do there in serving, as much as one would feel the presence out in the out of doors or in nature. He just felt God where he was and being of service. And what Brother Lawrence said about this time in his life, he said, "Amid the clatter and confusion of my kitchen, I hold to God, and with great tranquility, as though I were on my knees at the Blessed Sacrament." He said, "I made that kitchen so holy in a heart full of service that you wouldn't know the difference from a person kneeling at the altar." That's where he came to. And if we can look at what it is that we may be doing in our life, what it is that we are called to, or the sliver of the world that God has placed us in, if we can make and bring that presence and shine the presence in, there is a lasting service, loving service that we have contributed. It would be foolish to think that to serve others means that we cannot serve ourselves, because actually we're doing both at the same time. The spiritual law is to give is to receive. And so once we are caught up in the love of service, we are also served by it. Gordon Hinckley once said, "One of the great ironies of life is this: he or she who serves almost always benefits more than he or she who is served." The one who is serving almost always benefits more than the person served. Albert Schweitzer, whose life was about service, he said, "I don't know what your destiny will be, but the one thing I do know, the only ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found how to serve. We've got to listen to these people. One of the most profound teachings to realize around the matter of service is, for those whom you serve, you become one. You become one with those whom you serve. There is a connection that is made. It's magical, sometimes mystical. Sometimes you make a friend for life in an instant. So you're drawn into service, and your help. You were help when that person needed help. You responded in some way. Sometimes it may be a stranger, you'll never see them again. But you have accumulated a bit of set karma, which means good karma. Life is about oneness. Oneness is born of love. Service is love. And it creates oneness. So certainly it feels good to be of service to others, but there is more to it than that, you know? It's also the desire that we have internally to connect with life, to connect with others, you know? And that's a reflection of this internal, conscious or unconscious, desire for oneness and knowing that it's all one. You know, so many sacred connections are there to be made in service. There's, in the Gospel of John, in chapter 13, you can read about Jesus and the Lord's Supper and some of the things leading up to the Lord's Supper. And it was here that you read about where Jesus rose and poured some water into a basin and took a towel and began to wash the disciples' feet and then to wipe them dry with a towel. And I've shared before this because it's so significant to me. When he came to Peter, Peter resisted because Peter saw it as levels. He saw it as Jesus above and him beneath, and he was not going to allow Jesus to wash his feet. That was, that was off. How could you let him, the master, do this? And so he told Jesus, you will not wash my feet. And Jesus said, if I don't wash you, meaning if I don't serve you, you have no part with me. You won't have a sense of a connection. There'll be something lost that we could have had. You will have no part of me. So you become one with those whom you serve. And Jesus understood that. A couple verses later, he said, if I, who you see as your Lord and Master, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. It was a great teaching, you know. It was not about washing feet, you understand. It was about being in loving service. It was about moving into oneness. It was about taking away anything that would separate you, that you project onto the other about levels. No, we're all one. Jesus was always about one. I don't care how you project onto me as Master and Lord, but we're one. That's why I am the light of the world. You are the light of the world. Everywhere, through and through, Jesus was calling his disciples and followers to that realization. No one is beneath you as a humble servant of God. And perhaps nothing you are called to do is beneath you to do. There was a congregant who was here for several years and then got a job on Sundays, but for a number of years, he would come to the early service early, half hour, 45 minutes, and he would walk up and down the street along our property, and he would pick up trash and pieces of paper and things that people threw out of the window Saturday night driving through. And no one asked him to do it. He just did that, and I would notice him doing that. And I thought that was so amazing, that nothing was beneath him to do. He wasn't proud about that. People driving into church seeing him, so what? He never spoke to me about it, doing it. He just did it. It was a beautiful thing. I'll never forget that man. I know his name to this day. And he taught me. He taught me doing that. He taught me something. Remember the policeman that got out of his patrol car and began to throw the football around with a strange boy they had never met? Do you see that on the news? went national, went viral. Why? Because that's what we're to be about, you know? We can't be a Gandhi or a Mother Teresa or a Martin Luther King, but we can make a difference. We can. Wouldn't be in this world if we weren't called to be of help in some way. And so I'd like everyone really to take seriously the idea that each of you have a part in changing the world. Don't let your mind take you out of thinking that you can't be or that you aren't. You know, we're really here to help change the world, and within that piece of the world that you find yourself and those you come in contact with, find a place where you can offer help, okay? Sometimes it all begins with one. The one demonstrating and then joining others and to make the world a better place. It's the way it's always happened. We're all here to make a difference, and it's through loving service. And you know, happiness is making others happy. You know, and joy comes in somehow bringing joy to others. We get that. It was Tagore who said, "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. And then I awoke and saw that life was service. And then I acted on that. And behold, service was joy." I know that so many here already are in service. You're in service in this ministry, you're in service in various parts of this community and in schools and organizations and hospitals. I know that, and I acknowledge you. You should feel good about consciously entering into that endeavor. I'm here to honor you on that. And I honor all of you who find the time in a busy world to serve and share your talents and abilities here in this ministry. As I say, we wouldn't have a church without you, really. And so I truly thank all of you for doing that. And I want you to remember that what we have done for ourselves alone dies with us. And what we have done for others in the world, it will remain. It will be immortal. People need help. The world needs help. The world needs people helping people, you know? Pray to God that you be shown where and what and how it is that you may be serving in love. Help another and you help yourself. We're all one. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. At Unity, we believe that God's presence of love and goodness is everywhere, and that life is meant to be good. You can find out more about Unity and our teachings at unityhouston.org.
Are you currently church shopping, looking for that right church for you or your family? Perhaps you've been looking and been turned off by organized religion. It happens. Let me suggest you try Unity Church. We are a positive, practical, progressive approach to Christianity. Many who have found us have said, "I didn't know there was a church that taught what I always believed." Let's be honest, people shop for clothes, good restaurants, and the right church that feeds them spiritually. If you're seeking a spiritual truth beyond tradition, try Unity Church. Come join us.